I knew the guy was going to be a problem the second he walked into the atrium wearing Italian leather shoes and a Bluetooth headset like it was 2006. First all hands under his visionary leadership, and he kicks it off by calling us survivors of a bygone operating model. That's MBA for "You're all lucky I haven't fired you yet." I sat in the back corner with my coffee. Black, burnt, still better than his presentation. This was my first official appearance since they realigned me into a role that didn't technically exist. Special Project Liaison, which roughly translated to shut up, lay low, and collect data for the only person whose name actually mattered, our CEO. I didn't need a desk. Didn't need a title. I had something better, access. You ever seen a man smile while sinking a ship from the crow's nest? That was me. Watching, listening, logging every foot he shoved in his mouth like it was a retirement plan. 6 weeks ago, I was running one of the top-performing divisions in the company. Then came the reorg. New leadership, new strategy, new blood, and apparently, new ways to waste $3,000 on logo redesigns and leadership summits held in buildings that still smell like whiteboard markers and broken dreams. He was brought in from a competitor we'd nearly acquired back in 2019. Should have let them die, but someone up top thought we needed outside perspective. What we got was a glorified PowerPoint wizard with a god complex and a LinkedIn following of 13,000 sycophants who clapped at every thought leadership post he shat out. He didn't even try to hide the contempt. Legacy staff was his favorite insult. Said it like we were old furniture left behind by a dead ant. He once joked in a meeting that some folks were still plugging in USB drives like it's Y2K. Half the room laughed. I didn't. I was the one who installed the infrastructure they now rely on to track every metric he flings at us like confetti in a wind tunnel. My office got cleared without a word, just an Outlook invite from HR. Transition to strategic projects, effective immediately. No team, no roadmap, just a badge that still pinged green and a non-answer from HR when I asked who I reported to now. You'll be looped into critical initiatives, they said. Code 4. Sit down. Shut up. We'll call you when it's convenient. So I made a call. One call. To the man whose signature was still on my original contract. The CEO didn't say much. Just, understood. Keep your ears open. That's all I needed. The game had changed. I wasn't a division lead anymore. I was a ghost with a voice recorder and a list of names. And our new VP? He never even asked who signed off on my reassignment. Never looked past the org chart he rewrote on a Delta napkin during his onboarding flight. He took one look at me, mid-40s, crew cut, steel-toed boots under khakis, and decided I was excess weight. That was his first mistake. Because while he strutted through departments canceling initiatives he didn't understand, I was documenting the slow-motion car crash. Morale metrics? Down. Engagement? Tanking. 3 senior managers resigned in 2 weeks. Each exit interview tagged hostile environment. And him? Too busy planning a town hall with an LED backdrop and personal theme music like he was Steve Jobs selling us the next iPhone. He thought he was building an empire. I was just tracking where he put the landmines. And now, with the all hands an hour away, his slides were ready. His script was cocked and loaded. He even had one of those laser pointers shaped like a lightsaber. Swear to God. Said it added flair. I'd seen his deck in advance, by the way. He left it on the printer. Page 4 had a bullet point labeled Personnel Optimization Targets. I was bullet 3. He'd even included my name. No conversation. No notice. Just a red highlight and the word phase out. Thing is, he never cleared it. Not with HR. Not with legal. And definitely not with the one office that still signs the real pink slips around here. He thought I was a leftover. He had no idea I was the fuse point 15 years I gave this company. Not in the glossy brochure kind of way either. No press releases, no golf tournaments with VPs, no thought leadership podcasts. Just hard numbers, real turnarounds, and a Rolodex of people who knew if I said something would ship by Thursday, it shipped by Wednesday and ran cleaner than whatever some Harvard spreadsheet jockey dreamed up in his case study. I didn't claw my way up from tech support to division lead by being flashy. I got there by being indispensable. By the time most of these PowerPoint pirates were learning how to log into Slack, I'd already salvaged 3 failing regions, implemented the backbone system they still use to track fleet analytics, and negotiated our largest supplier contract to date, something they conveniently leave out at shareholder meetings because it didn't come with a logo redesign. But legacies like mine don't show up well on pivot tables. So when the new VP strutted in with his 6-figure smile and synergy targets, it wasn't a surprise that my name was near the top of his list. He didn't ask what I did, he asked who I threatened. Because guys like him don't build, they prune. And not with surgical precision either, with a chainsaw duct taped to a spreadsheet. He announced his arrival with a memo titled Operation Phoenix. I shit you not. Said we were shedding legacy inefficiencies to make room for future-facing talent. The guy used more buzzwords in one paragraph than I've used in my entire goddamn career. By week 2, he'd realigned for department heads, dissolved an entire training initiative mid-cycle, and cut 6 internal liaisons, including mine. That was the funny part. I wasn't fired. I wasn't laid off. I was reassigned. Overnight. One Friday afternoon, I came back from grabbing a gas station burrito to find my name stripped off the org chart and a calendar invite waiting in my inbox from HR. Title change, Strategic Liaison, effective Monday. No team, no KPIs, no office. Just a title that sounded like it belonged on a CIA badge and a vague assurance from HR that I was still mission critical. That's HR speak for, we don't know what the hell just happened either. It stung. I won't lie. 15 years and suddenly I'm an extra in the show I used to direct. But I didn't rage. I didn't email the board or make some big speech about loyalty and betrayal. I made one call. To the only person who mattered. He picked up on the second ring. Saw the org chart, was all he said. Still want eyes on the integration? He paused. More than ever. That was it. One line. No drama. No rescue. Just confirmation that while the VP was building his paper kingdom, I'd been given a different mandate. Observe. Report. Assess. What he didn't know, what he never even thought to check, was that my contract wasn't standard. I'd renegotiated it 2 years ago after I pulled our Midwest division out of a multi-million-dollar sinkhole. Tied my employment not to the division, but to the office of the CEO. Dual reporting structure, carved into the back pages of the handbook he never read. That made me untouchable without C-level clearance. But that didn't mean I was safe. It meant I was dangerous, because he thought I was a demoted has-been with no teeth. But what I really was a loaded camera in the room. A loose thread tied directly to the corner office. And he kept pulling. Every smug speech. Every layoff he announced over Slack. Every time he paraded through departments asking, "What exactly do you do here?" I logged it. Not just names and numbers. Faces. Reactions. Internal surveys. Vendor complaints. One executive sponsor pulled funding from a pilot project because, and I quote, "The new VP doesn't understand procurement from a damn vending machine." It was death by 1,000 buzzwords. And while he spun in circles trying to modernize things that weren't broken, I just watched, documented, waited, because sooner or later he'd come for me again. And when he did, I wouldn't be filing an appeal. I'd be holding the detonator. He called it the purge. Not even joking. Slapped it on a slide in 44-point Helvetica like it was a Marvel sequel. Phase 1. The purge, eliminate underperformance. Optimize the core. Beneath it, a pixelated GIF of a dumpster fire looped behind bullet points on enhancing productivity through targeted attrition. You could hear the soul leak out of the room. This was week 3. His first initiative had been a company-wide mandatory performance audit. Every employee rated on a 5-point scale, scored not by deliverables, but by forward potential against evolving market velocity. That's code for prove you're psychic or pack a box. Folks who'd been here longer than his hair product were suddenly on 90-day plans written in legalese thick enough to choke a moose. People who had survived 3 CEOs, 2 bankruptcies, and 1 system-wide outage that nearly cost us a government contract were now being told their value curve had plateaued. He ran it like a game show. Every Friday, new names disappeared from Slack. Calendar invites gone. Email forwards bouncing. No warning, no thanks. Just a ripple of fear and a rumor mill on overdrive. And HR? They weren't fans. Oh, he thought they were. Thought the director of people ops smiled in those meetings because she agreed. She didn't. She smiled because her hands were tied and she was too smart to let him see her load the revolver. What he never understood, what none of the MBA-wielding axemen ever understand, is that HR doesn't work for you. Not really. They work for the company, for compliance, for legal. And when legal starts whispering wrongful termination patterns and hostile precedent, it doesn't matter how firm your handshake is. But he didn't get that. He thought HR reported to him. And the moment I realized that, the very second it clicked that he didn't know how reporting lines actually flowed, I nearly laughed out loud in a meeting. He'd called an ops sync, made everyone stand, said it kept the energy high. Then he turned to the director of HR, pointed at the org chart on the monitor and said, "Let's make sure your team's metrics roll up clean to me next week." She blinked once, then turned to me, and I saw it in her eyes. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. He didn't know. He genuinely didn't know. And that's when I started keeping notes. Real ones. Not just the CYA kind. I'm talking timestamped quotes, Slack screenshots, exit interviews slipped to me by managers too burned out to fight back. The man was writing his own obituary, and I had front row seats with a damn notebook. I became something I never thought I'd be in this company. A priest, confessor. Folks would pass me in the stairwell, pause, and just mutter, "You got a second?" I'd nod. We'd find a quiet spot behind the mailroom or next to the dead vending machine in the north wing. They'd vent. I'd listen. Never offered advice. Just listened. Took mental snapshots. Cross-referenced them later. And what I heard, Jesus. One senior engineer was called out by name in a department-wide email for contributing to timeline friction. Another was told in front of his peers that legacy code means legacy thinking. He was escorted out a week later, still holding the USB drive that stored the last clean version of our logistics backend. People stopped taking PTO. Hell, they stopped drinking coffee, afraid the walk to the break room might get them flagged as inefficient. He ruled by paranoia, didn't build anything, just tore shit down with jargon and swagger and that smug little tilt of his head like he was always 2 seconds from correcting your grammar. And I sat in every single one of his stand-ups, smiled politely, nodded, even complimented his vision once when he was spitballing some nonsense about flattening team silos through vertical decentralization. I was invisible to him, just some husk of a former lead in a role with no weight. But behind the scenes, I had access, still looped in on the board update distribution list. Still had edit permissions in the shared drive where HR dumped their quarterly workforce strategy reports. And the more I looked, the uglier it got. We were hemorrhaging talent. Vendors weren't renewing contracts. Cross-functional KPIs were slipping like ice in July. And this man, this blue-suited executioner, was sipping green juice in his office, monologuing about disruptive alignment, while his own department couldn't keep a project plan consistent for more than 2 days. It wasn't just reckless. It was dumb. And dumb is dangerous when it thinks it's brilliant. But I stayed still, watched, listened, waited, because eventually he'd run out of people to cut. And the blade would swing my way again. And this time, I'd be ready. Friday, end of day. Sky outside going that weird bruise purple Ohio does right before a thunderstorm rolls in. I just finished rereading a vendor report for the 4th time. Not because I needed to, but because it was the only thing on my calendar that didn't make me want to drink gasoline. Then the ping hit. Subject, quick sync, office 3D, 4:45 p.m. Sender him. No context. No assistant. Just the digital equivalent of snapping his fingers and expecting me to heal. Fine. I walked in with a pen I didn't need and a notebook I wouldn't use. He was already standing behind the desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up just enough to show his Peloton tan line. Real, I'm a leader, not a boss cosplay. The man had probably watched one too many TED Talks and decided standing equals dominance. Take a seat, he said. I didn't. I just raised an eyebrow. He smirked like he was enjoying himself. So, he started, hands in pockets, pacing like a shark in a fishbowl. I've been reviewing headcount, trying to figure out where the inefficiencies are. He let the silence hang, expecting a reaction. I blinked. He nodded, as if I'd confirmed something profound. You've been in this strategic liaison role for what, 5 weeks now? 6, I said, give or take. He leaned against the edge of the desk, like we were sharing a beer at a backyard cookout instead of playing chicken with my job. Let me level with you, he said, like he was about to do me a favor. We need people who execute, who drive impact. Right now, you're just floating. I tilted my head. Floating. He nodded solemnly, like a priest about to break bad news. Not your fault. These reorgs, they create drift. People fall through the cracks. No real deliverables, no reporting chain. And from a comp perspective, that's just... He whistled and did a little fingers down motion, like my salary was a leaky faucet he needed to shut off. I tapped my pen against the notebook I wasn't writing in. You think I'm dead weight? I think, he said carefully, we need to prioritize performance. And right now, there's not a lot on paper justifying your placement. I smiled. Just a little. You been drawing up a cut list? I asked casually. He didn't answer, which meant yes. Make sure to check with HR before you formalize anything, I said. That stopped him. Just a flicker. Barely a twitch in the corner of his mouth. He recovered fast. I don't need permission, he said. Calm. Confident. Wrong. No, I said. You need clearance. Now that got under his skin. He straightened. The pretense slipped a bit. I don't think you understand who makes those decisions now, he said. Oh, I do, I replied, voice flat as a factory floor. I just don't think you do. The room got quiet. He stared at me, trying to measure something he couldn't quite see, like I was a math problem with too many variables. Then he scoffed. Look, I'm trying to give you a chance here. You could easily be next. But if you show me something, anything, I can make this go away. I leaned back against the wall, folded my arms, and met his gaze. You're assuming I want it to go away. He blinked. I stood. No drama. No threats. Just gravity. Before you draft whatever manifesto you think passes for a layoff notice, I said, read the org map. The real one. The version with reporting dotted lines and C-level authorizations. His nostrils flared. Just a little. And while you're at it, I added, maybe take a peek at my contract. You'll find some fun bedtime reading near the back. I turned to leave. He called after me, voice tight. Don't make this adversarial. I didn't turn around, just raised a hand in a lazy wave and said, then stop swinging at shadows. And then I walked out, leaving him standing there in his performance wear button-up, probably wondering if he'd just misfired or fired a missile. That was the warning shot. No raised voices. No dramatic threats. Just a tiny shift in the air. The kind of shift that means the storm isn't coming. It's already here. I didn't rush it. You don't swat a hornet. You let it sting itself to death in a bottle. So I started slow, quiet, surgical. First came the process refinements. Small things seemingly harmless. A suggestion about vendor approval chains here, a flagged inefficiency in onboarding protocols there. Each routed through the COO officially because he oversees operations. Unofficially, because he still owed me for keeping his ass off a compliance audit 2 years ago. Nothing aggressive. Just notes. Consider reinstating dual approval routing for international procurement. Notice latency issues in the new flattened workflow chain. Recommend reverting to phased gate reviews. Suggestions dressed in concern, not criticism. Wrapped in data, tagged with timestamps, CC'd to the right people. What the VP never realized, never even paused to consider, was that I still had observer access to every strategic review thread. Legacy privilege, buried deep in my permissions from when I was handling merger integration playbooks. No one had revoked it. No one had even remembered I had it. But I had it, and I used it, which meant every time he sent out a restructuring update to the board, I was already 3 steps ahead, preloading alternative narratives, threading board members with supplemental data, offering clarity where his language got too vague. Always as a helper, never as a threat. One director even replied to me directly, "Appreciate your insight here. Concerns noted. Stay close. Stay close. That's code for we're watching. Keep feeding us." Meanwhile, I made sure every suggestion I passed up the chain directly contradicted one of his changes. Not blatantly, just enough to make it clear someone with senior insight still had their hand on the tiller. He wanted leaner procurement. I recommended reinstating double sign-offs due to vendor fraud risk. He wanted cross-functional pods. I highlighted a recent dip in collaboration scores from teams forced into silo mergers. He pitched centralized decisioning for customer accounts. I reminded the COO how much we'd lost the last time regional discretion was removed. None of it was technically insubordinate, not actionable sabotage, but together, it painted a picture that the restructuring was sloppy, uninformed, potentially harmful, and the board started asking questions. Not directly, not in public, but I caught wind of a backchannel thread between the COO, HR, and legal about due diligence in leadership changes. One comment caught my eye. "Have we confirmed authorization levels on recent terminations?" He felt it too. I watched him during his weekly stand-up. That twitch in his jaw when he spoke too fast. The increased pacing. The extra slides. The way he started leaving more buzzwords on the cutting room floor and leaning harder into justifying changes with anecdotal nonsense. He was rattled, but not enough. Because arrogance isn't just a character flaw, it's a filter. He only saw what confirmed his power. The rest? Noise. He chalked the friction up to legacy resistance. Told the sales team we were rounding the corner. Said the KPIs were lagging, but catching. He even joked in a leadership sync that some people were still slow-walking their own exits. Someone laughed. Someone else didn't. HR's director blinked too long at her screen when he said it. I took note. Then came the announcement. All hands. 2 weeks out. Led by him. His first vision session. Slides prepared. Music cued. Title, Future-Facing Together. A realignment story. I got a look at the outline. So forwarded it to me under the subject line thoughts, which in our language meant, tell me if this is going to catch fire. It was ambitious, planned layoffs, org chart reshuffles, a new transparency-first leadership style, and a final slide titled, Shedding Redundancy to Strengthen Core Values. I knew what that meant. I also knew I was on the list. He hadn't said it outright. He didn't need to. The writing was in the phrasing, the headcount targets, the phrasing of strategic redundancies under non-revenue contributing roles. I'd be Exhibit A, the final proof that he meant business. He thought this presentation would be his coronation. He had no idea it was his eulogy. Because while he rehearsed his monologue in front of a full-length mirror, I was making sure every name on that list had a record. Every call, every contradiction, every step he took without authority. Every policy he bent until it snapped. The fuse was lit. All that was left was to let him walk into the fire. They packed us into the auditorium like sardines in lanyards. Folding chairs, LED backlighting, custom-branded water bottles that probably cost more than some people's PTO balance. The new VP stood dead center on the riser, sleeves rolled, wireless mic in hand, pacing like a TEDx savior who just discovered the word disruption. Today, he beamed, we embark on the next phase of our transformation journey. Christ. The lights dimmed, and the first slide hit. A bar graph so color-saturated it looked like a popsicle suicide. Underneath, Q performance versus goal, adjusted for realignment. He talked for 25 minutes straight. About velocity stacks, operational agility, cultural recalibration, and other things that mean absolutely nothing unless you've been trapped in a WeWork with too many whiteboards. People were trying to keep up. A few nodded. Some were staring down at their phones pretending to take notes. The engineers looked like they were trying to remember how to blink. Then came slide 14. Talent optimization and strategic consolidation. That was the cue. His tone shifted. Slower now. More deliberate. We've made progress, he said. But not without resistance. He turned, scanned the room. And let's be honest with ourselves. Not everyone is aligned with where we're going. Somewhere near the front, someone shifted in their seat. A throat cleared. The VP kept going. Some roles, frankly, have outlived their impact. Some people are no longer contributing. And then he looked at me, dead center, right past the rows of operations analysts and junior execs, past the marketing team with their branded notebooks and stiff smiles. He looked at me like he was about to perform a magic trick and needed a volunteer. He took a breath. Some of you are done here. The room went ice cold. You could hear the AC wheezing through a vent behind the risers. A water bottle cap rolled off someone's lap and clinked against the floor. Nobody moved. Then he gestured, arm out, deliberate. To that end, he said, effective immediately. That's when I stood. Slowly, calmly, like I just remembered I left the oven on at home. I didn't look at him. I didn't need to. I walked toward the stage. No rush, no heat, just boots on carpet, one step at a time, cutting through a silence so sharp it felt like a wire around the throat of the whole damn room. He was still talking, something about cultural evolution and decisive leadership, but his words were losing steam. Eyes were turning. The sound system picked up the faint squeak of my chair as I pushed it back. He tried to regain control. Please take your seat. This isn't. I reached the edge of the stage, turned to face the room. I could see them now. The director of HR, the CEO, legal counsel, the guy from finance who once cried during a layoff email he had to send. They were all staring, not at him, at me. And I said 5 words, dead calm. No emotion, just a surgical incision through the tension. Correction, he doesn't run HR. Gasps, 1 or 2 audible. The VP froze. I watched his brain try to catch up. Watched him run through every scenario he'd never prepared for, because in his mind, I'd never had the guts to stand up. Never had the standing. Except I did. From the corner of the room, I saw a figure rise. Door opened. Dress shoes. Crisp suit. No lanyard. The CEO. He didn't speak. Didn't nod. Just walked. Past the rows of stunned employees. Past the still flashing projector. Right past the VP. And toward me, carrying one thing in his hand. A microphone. The CEO didn't stride in. He materialized. Like the building itself spat him out the moment the VP overstepped. The door creaked open. Real slow. Dramatic as a funeral march. All heads turned. Breath caught in every throat like a fishbone. There he was. Charcoal suit. Tie barely loosened. Sleeves still crisp. The kind of posture that said I've outlasted 5 boards, 2 lawsuits, and 3 hostile takeovers. Don't test me today. He walked past the rows of frozen employees. Past interns gripping their notebooks like life vests. Past the legal counsel who suddenly looked like he needed a diaper change. Didn't even glance at the VP. Just moved straight down the center like gravity bent toward him. He reached the stage. Climbed the steps. No words. No nod. Just a hand extended. Holding the mic. To me. I took it. Felt heavier than it should have. Like justice weighs something when it's earned. The VP's face. Lord. Color drained like a busted pipe. He took a half step forward, trying to salvage something. Authority, dignity, a coherent thought. Anything. Sir, I thought. The CEO cut him off. Clean. Sharp. He's here on my directive, he said. Voice like ice cracking across a frozen lake. You weren't cleared to terminate anyone. Silence. Real silence now. The kind that soaks into the walls and makes time feel slower. The VP opened his mouth. Closed it. The CEO didn't look at him again. Didn't need to. He turned, gave me the smallest nod, then stepped back off the riser. All eyes on me. Not because I was loud. Because I was still. I took a breath. Not deep. Just enough. Raised the mic. Let's clear a few things up, I said. Tone flat. Voice steady. Heart rate steady too. I'd waited for this. For the last 6 weeks, I've been serving as an internal auditor under direct instruction from the office of the CEO. My job wasn't to execute. It was to observe. A few heads snapped around. HR, ops, procurement, the folks who'd whispered to me in stairwells and parking lots. Their eyes widened, they knew. I've logged every policy deviation, every unauthorized personnel decision, every restructuring step that bypassed compliance. I let that hang, then turned slowly to face the VP. Every single one. He took a step back. No, this isn't. This was all reviewed. It's all been. I held up a hand. Not a shout, just a gesture. He stopped. I faced the crowd again. I've also interviewed 17 staff members across 5 departments who resigned or were terminated without proper exit protocol, several of whom now have legal representation. Cough from the back. The legal director shifted in his seat. And just to clarify, I added, HR does not report to the VP of Transformation, nor does legal, nor does finance, nor do I. Pause. Breathe. I could feel the whole company exhaling through gritted teeth. The last time I checked, the chain of authority still matters. So when someone unilaterally decides to trim the fat without the authorization to even call a meeting with HR, I turn my eyes back to him. That's not leadership. That's liability. The CEO stepped forward again. Calm. Controlled. You're relieved of your duties, he said, crisp and final. Effective now. VP opened his mouth. Security was already halfway down the aisle. He didn't protest. He just stood there, gutted. No mic, no slides, just one man, alone on a stage he thought he owned. I turned the mic in my hand, paused, then walked to the edge, handed it back to the CEO. Didn't need to say another word. The truth had already done the talking. The air had turned molasses thick. You could feel it clinging to the walls, humming between the rows of stunned employees, managers, techs, analysts, people who'd spent the last 6 weeks walking on eggshells, wondering when the axe would swing their way. And now the blade had changed direction. I turned back to the crowd, held the mic like a scalpel. Let's walk through what just happened, shall we? I said. My voice didn't rise, didn't shake. Calm, cold, controlled. Over the past 6 weeks, this division has seen 15 involuntary terminations, 4 of which bypassed documented HR protocol, 2 of which, per policy, should have triggered immediate compliance review. I didn't need to look at HR, but I felt her flinch. None of that happened, I continued. Why? Because someone, and here I nodded, just slightly, toward the statue formerly known as RVP. Decided process was optional. That authority was inherited by title, not earned through structure. I took a slow step forward. No drama, just letting the weight of it land. He also initiated vendor realignments without cross-functional consultation, canceled 2 strategic pilots that had signed partner MOUs, resulting in both suppliers requesting legal arbitration and 1 pausing shipments last week. Finance shifted uncomfortably. I could see the COO typing something into his phone, eyes wide. I held up the printed slide deck the VP had presented not 10 minutes ago, the one with all the bright colors and empty buzzwords. Let's go ahead and look at page 9. The KPI slide. I clicked the remote. A bar graph. His bar graph. Only this time, I'd updated the numbers. Current quarter-to-date performance against projections. 62% of goal. Lowest in 9 reporting cycles. Our attrition rate, 17%. Highest since the recession. A few gasps. No one looked at him. He stood there, jaw clenched, shoulders rising in panic. Then came the final cut. And just so we're crystal clear, I said, my role here wasn't ceremonial. I wasn't floating. I wasn't dead weight. I stepped toward center stage. I was placed here by the CEO to conduct a confidential leadership assessment as part of a broader restructuring audit. Gasps, audible this time, from people who hadn't known, from people who had suspected. Eyes widened, mouths opened, postures changed. That was the shift. Shock became understanding. Understanding became alignment. And alignment, that became momentum. The kind that doesn't stop once it turns. The kind that leaves you behind. The CEO stepped forward again. Quiet, Still, you're relieved of your duties, he said to the VP. Effective now. 2 words, razor sharp. No appeal. The VP tried to speak, some broken syllable of a protest forming behind clenched teeth, but by then security was already moving. 2 men, plain clothes, nothing aggressive, just presence. 1 at each side of the stage. He looked at the crowd. No allies. Not a single nod. Just 100 sets of eyes that now saw him clearly, for what he was. Temporary. Replaceable. Finished. He stepped down. Walked out. No bag. No laptop. Just the sound of shoes on tile and a door closing harder than it needed to. I stood alone. Held the mic one last time. Looked at the crowd. Policy exists for a reason, I said. Accountability exists for a reason. Leadership without either is just theater. Then I walked to the CEO. Handed him the mic. No bow. No applause. Just a room full of people who finally remembered what it felt like to breathe. 1 week later, the office felt lighter, not cheerful. This place wasn't built for joy, but the tension had cracked, like a window finally opened after a long, breathless winter. The company-wide email hit inboxes at 9:01 a.m. Subject line, Leadership Update, Strategic Operations Transition. Body copy was sterile, of course. It always is. But the 3rd paragraph said enough. Effective immediately, Redacted has been appointed Interim Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations to support executive realignment and lead integration efforts through Q4. My name. Right there. Plain as day. Not a surprise to the people who mattered, but a jolt to everyone who'd spent the last month watching me walk the halls like a ghost with no chain of command. HR followed it up with a second memo. Updated ethics and termination protocols. For pages long. New language. New policies. Mandatory retraining on authority boundaries and personnel decisioning. You could feel the writing on the wall, the kind of writing that gets etched in policy binders and whispered in conference rooms for years. As for him, official word was a personal leave to explore other opportunities. The hallway translation? Fired so hard even his Outlook calendar ghosted him. His office was cleared overnight. Name scrubbed from the directory. No farewell party. Not even a damn donut. Rumor said he tried to pitch himself to a startup the next morning and got laughed out of the room when they asked why his references all deferred to legal. I didn't gloat. Didn't need to. You don't dunk on a man already drowning in his own reflection. That week, I did what I always do. I showed up early. Walked the floor. Checked on the systems he never learned to pronounce, let alone run. And this time, people looked up. Not with fear, not with forced smiles, but with that silent acknowledgement, the kind you get when people realize they've been holding their breath for too long, and you were the reason they could finally let it out. A nod from ops, a whispered thank you from HR. Even the interns, who used to scatter when they saw a manager coming, stopped fidgeting when I walked by. They weren't scared anymore, because fear had left the building, tucked under an overpaid arm in a leather laptop bag. On Friday, I passed by the same meeting room. Stage still there. Chairs still lined up like they were waiting for someone to come lie to them again. I paused at the door. No fanfare. No audience. Just me and the echo of a moment that had changed everything. 15 years in this place, and I'd never raised my voice once. Never made a scene. Never needed to. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is wait. He said I was done. He didn't realize I was just getting started. You don't cut the guy holding the ledger. You promote him,